Hi, everybody. I'm back, and I want to talk about advocating for communities that you're not a part of. This is something that I do sometimes, so these are just my tips and tricks about it. First of all, we can't talk about advocating for communities you're not a part of without first addressing two things: implicit bias and privilege. And these kind of go together. So if you haven't studied implicit bias, I will just say if you go to grad school for social work, you will, I hope. And if you haven't done that yet, implicit bias is basically, how can I say it quickly? If I say, hey, picture a lawyer, implicit bias is you're going to picture a white man. If I say, hey, picture a doctor, you're going to picture a white man. If I say, hey, picture a CEO, you're going to picture a white man. If I say, hey, picture a criminal, you're probably going to picture a person of color. So this is implicit bias, and this is something that we all have. This is just like your lizard brain. And so you can go to the Implicit Bias Association test and take that to prove it. But for right now, let's just start with the base knowledge that everybody has implicit bias. Let's couple that with privilege. Privilege, again, if you have not studied it, I will be very simple about it. Privilege is the things about yourself that you can't hide. So your skin color can be your privilege. If you are cisgendered, that can be your privilege. Your religion can be your privilege. Your economic status can be your privilege. Your marital status can be your privilege. So recognizing that I, as a white woman who passes for Christian, I have some privilege. When I advocate for marginalized communities that I'm not part of, like people of color, like children, like people of a different religious background, I am mostly just using my privilege to draw attention to situations. I consider that a little bit different than advocacy. Advocacy can come from within the community. People of color are not typically out there begging for white people to help. Same with women. Like, I'm a feminist and I am not out there begging men to help with this issue. I think for a long time, white men have been coming in and telling people what to do and what's what, and white women have been doing the same thing when it comes to social work. So recognizing implicit bias, recognizing your own privilege, once you've done that, okay, how do I now go forth and use where I am to help people? So I try to consider the space that I'm in. I do have privilege when I go to a town hall to sit up front, ask questions, and my privilege is that my voice will be heard and recognized, and I'll be called on, and I can be very pushy in a way that probably a woman of color can't be, because she will be labeled an angry black woman. So recognizing that privilege in certain situations, I try to take advantage of it by drawing attention to an issue that I have the opportunity to be loud about, to make noise about. On the other side of that is when I have the opportunity to go into communities of which I'm not a part, I recognize that my place is not to sit up front, is not to be loud, is not to demand change, but to afford respect to that community. So if I go to a historically black church, I sit in the back, I keep my hand down, and I show respect. And so when I go into communities that aren't mine, I try to be mindful of not assuming what that community needs, not barging in there and insisting that this change needs to happen, but instead coming from a place of, these are my skills and this is what I can do, and obviously here's my privilege. Do you need assistance? Do you want assistance? And if so, would you like it to be from me? And be willing to hear no, and be willing to hear cool, thanks, bye, and be willing to feel some discomfort. That's an uncomfortable conversation to have. And until you have it like multiple times, it's going to give you some anxiety and discomfort, or at least it did to me. I don't know, at some point it became a more comfortable conversation, but I want you to know that you are going to screw up. You are going to do things that I would probably call like colonizing behaviors, white savior behaviors. But when I do that, and I do that, I apologize to the person, I apologize to the community if I need to, and then I move on and keep going, and that's what I would encourage you to do. And you have a real opportunity to learn about implicit bias and privilege, and once you learn about those things, you can't unlearn them. They're with you. So take that knowledge and go out in the world and do some good with it.